If you had any advice to any emerging artists out there, what would be your advice to them?
I think be really proactive, and if you find something interesting and you don't really know why, just follow it. Just go like guns blazing and do it.
Do you find it challenging making a business out of it?
I think it definitely is a challenging industry. You can have like huge like peaks and troughs in anyone's career. You have to stay relevant and interesting, and it's like any sort of business. You have to be a brand to some degree.
Welcome to BizzTalk. Today we're going to interview very well-established artist, Rex Southwick. We're happy to have you here. Thank you so much, Rex, for taking the time.
Thanks for coming.
My God, on our way here, we were actually talking about the first time when we met you. I remember how I was texting you in the middle of the night because I needed help with one of my artworks and I got so anxious and I was thinking, oh my God, Rex could help me because he knows everything about art. And you actually helped me building up a canvas. So yeah, it's nice having you here today. What inspired you to do art and how did all of this begin? I mean, look around, this is fantastic work.
Well, I guess it was sort of the thing I ended up doing. I have like such broad passions in like art, antiques, furniture, design, architecture, and I guess it kind of accumulated into this. I think being an artist is not like the most normal job on planet Earth, but you've got to give it a go. So I gave it a go, studied art, moved to London, gave it a go, and it somehow worked, which is a miracle. And just trying to keep it working.
It always does.
Yeah. But I think art is like a really fantastic thing when it does work because you can combine so many interests and try and condense it into one thing.
I noticed that usually you use pink as a background for your paintings. Why is that the case?
I mean, art historically, it's sort of like a contemporary take on, so the Italians would use like a sort of an orange ground, the English would use a grey ground because you look at the climate, like it makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think when I was studying, I played around with lots of different colours, and I think pink is the one, it's sort of like a bit of a trademark as well. It sort of breaks the white surface. It makes it much easier to approach as a painting, and it's like instantly something that you can use. So it's just become embedded in my process now, I guess.
I was also wondering, with all the houses that you're representing, have you ever stayed at them or do you have somehow a personal connection to them?
So the last two big shows in London and the last series I worked on in France, I lived in Palm Springs. I did like a series of work. I did a residency at the museum in Palm Springs. So I was literally living there for 3 months, January, February, March, and then again, January, February, March. So that was quite nice because I got like a complete look at some projects. So it's like 2 years basically. You get a huge scope on like projects and people, and then you get much better access to stuff, and it's much more authentic to get imagery and actually understand what I find interesting about them in the first place. And then in the south of France, it was a similar sort of thing. I lived there with another artist and another writer on a residency run by my gallery. And it's super interesting because you get to inhabit a space, and I love like the dynamics of like how a space affects you, like how a house can affect how you think and act and feel and your relationships with people in those spaces. So I think living in it really gives you much more well-rounded and informed.
More depth.
Yeah, it gives you much more depth to understand it, and also you start noticing things that you wouldn't notice if you just go to a house once.
And I assume it also gives you more of a connection to the property itself when you paint it, as you can envision it in a different way than people who
it becomes
just
more alive.
See it. It becomes
Massively
more alive.
so.
And when I look at your paintings, you can see they're actually alive, like they're talking to you.
Rex, can you tell us what you're working on at the moment? This is a pretty cool studio.
Thanks. It's the first paint I've done with like a new ground. So normally the paintings are all like pink. So this is a new one with like an underpainting. It's a trial. It's a trial phase. I had a big show in Munich in April. I have a show in London in June. So I'm sort of like using this quiet phase.
Amazing.
Wasn't like doing commissions and stuff just to like try new stuff out. I don't know if this painting will ever exist, if it will be finished, but I'm just trying stuff out. So it's like a big landscape thing, Mediterranean landscape. I'm looking at like unrealism basically, like escapism, unrealism.
And Rex, how would you say to determine the monetary value of an artwork?
I mean, it's pretty arbitrary, isn't it? It's very difficult. I guess it depends on what if you associate value in like the artist's process, in the artist themselves, their story, and what they're trying to put across, I guess. And if their narrative is interesting and you find it interesting as a collector, if it like strikes a chord and brings something to your mind that's either
obviously at the end also what someone is offering to pay. I mean, I assume that the more talented you get and the more people see your art and start to appreciate your art and understand your art, the more prices an artist can in general also request for his art. The people in the paintings, do you actually know these people? Do you have any connection to these people, or are these just people, imaginary people?
Yeah, so actually that is like a really good question. In Palm Springs, before I went to Palm Springs, I worked a lot like remotely, so I got images from like realtors or like landscape installers, and I didn't really know the people that well. But when you live there, you do, and I got chatting, and it was interesting because they actually like, they thought what I did was the weirdest job on planet Earth.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah, they were like, they just
Yeah,
didn't
they can't
understand
understand.
why I was interested in taking photos and cutting a palm tree down. But then when they got it and I was like, oh, look at the painting, like this is what I'm doing, they were like super interested and they were really open and receptive. Like I had an amazing time, amazing conversations. The funny thing was about Palm Springs that I didn't realize, I thought a lot of the like workers and laborers were like Latin American people who'd like come into work, but a lot of them were actually like indigenous peoples that had like been in the Coachella Valley for like thousands of years and now had just been like resorted to like working the landscape and being groundsmen. They're very successful, interesting people as well. That's the thing that you don't really understand. They have like big companies and they're really in tune with like the landscape and climate. So it was a very like educational, like interesting thing that I would never have got.
Beautiful.
Going through Instagram, like screenshotting stuff and emailing people.
If you had any advice to any emerging artist out there who is Rex 10 years ago, what would be your advice to them?
I think be really proactive, and if you find something interesting and you don't really know why, just follow it. Just go like guns blazing and do it. I think it's better to. I work quite retrospectively anyway, so I like would do a painting and then I think like, why do I find that interesting? And then in the process of breaking that down, I can work that out. But I think in education we're taught to like make lots of little steps to make one big thing, but I don't think that's always the best way. I think sometimes, I mean, I'm quite like gun-ho. I'm like, if I do something, it's quite impulsive. So I feel like I work quite impulsively. So I'm like, I'm going to move to America. I'm going to go to France and do this. And then in the year, like after that, you can break down more and more on what you find interesting and then go back. Like that's the, yeah.
And then Rex, Nick and I both wanted to know, being an artist like you, do you find it challenging making a business out of it?
I think it definitely is a challenging industry, especially now, like
So competitive.
yeah, it's very competitive. The market's like always shifting. You can have like huge like peaks and troughs in anyone's career. You have to stay relevant and interesting, and it's like any sort of business. You have to be a brand to some degree. And then there's also like the pretty boring business side of things, which is like VAT, deliveries. You're like, if you're an artist, you're making a product fundamentally. Like you're making a commodity, and it has to be of a certain quality to deliver. You can't deliver a painting and it be broken or it be badly made. So there is that element. Like anything, it's like a business.
Thank you, Rex, for giving us the opportunity to interview you today and also to give us a spark of the life behind the canvas. It's very inspiring, and I think any emerging artist can learn a lot from you.
Yes, thank you, Rex.
I hope so.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
And I remember us sitting in Soho one night in London, and you were telling me about how most of it started in a garage in Dubai, and everyone thought you were crazy for doing